And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping beasts, creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. Kind, right? That's kin, right? And to be kind is to treat others as if they're your kin. And so, according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. That's continually represented over and over. God said, that's the thing that calls being into existence. And God said it was good, and that's the fundamental judgment about the nature of reality. And, you know, one of the things that happens in the translation, in the movement, let's say, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, is God is obviously blessing creation in the beginning of this story. And then you have Old Testament God, and like, don't mess around with him, right? Because he'll give you good smiting if you get out of line. There's no doubt about that. And he's kind of an arbitrary character. And, you know, lots of modern people think, well, how could you believe in a God like that? And it's like, when I read that, I think, well, the Old Testament people, that isn't how they thought. They thought, you better look the hell out, because life is really difficult, and if you step out of line, you're going to get flattened, and God doesn't care, in some sense, whether you approve of him. It's like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Obviously, you don't approve. It's like, you better pay attention, though, because otherwise you're going to be in real trouble. And that there's real wisdom in that. Nietzsche really admired the Old Testament as a work of literature, because he thought that the representation of the divine, let's say, as a representation of the essential nature of being was extraordinarily accurate in its arbitrary and often cruel nature. You know, it wasn't following a morality that human beings could really understand as moral, but he thought that was very realistic, and I like that interpretation. But what happens in the New Testament is quite interesting, because there's an insistence all of a sudden in the New Testament that you're supposed to act towards God as if he's nothing but good. And that's such a strange thing, because you look at the world and you think, yeah, really? Just good, eh? Well, the cancer and the earthquakes is kind of hard to fit into that picture. And, you know, the terrible things that happen to children and all of that is very difficult to square with the notion of a good God, obviously. But then the underlying idea is that if you act in that manner, it makes it more likely to be true. It's something like that. And so I would consider that in some sense an act of both courage and faith. It's like you're going to make the case, like God makes at the beginning of the Bible, that being is in fact good. Now, you can't see it because, well, you get to see all the things about it that aren't so good. That's not the point. It's a metaphysical presupposition, something like that. It's a decision to act that way. I'm going to act as if being is good, and to further that. And then the implicit idea is, well, there isn't any way that you can make things work out better than to do that. And so there's a courageous element to it, which I think is also expressed to some degree in the idea of Christ's voluntary sacrifice of his own life. His presupposition was something like, I'm going to act as if God is good, and I'm going to play that out right to the end. And now that becomes something like a divine pattern. And I believe there's wisdom in that, because, again, most of the time that I've been wrestling with this sort of thing, I've always been looking at the opposite. I haven't been studying good, I've been studying evil. Because evil is easier to believe, especially after the 20th century. It's like, I think you have to be blind not to think about the things that happened in the 20th century as evil. And some of the things that happened were so brutal, it's just absolutely unimaginable. And, well, unless you imagine it. And it's right there, it's part of the historical record. And then I think, well, if there's something that's that terrible, it indicates as clearly as anything can that there's also something that's its opposite, and that's whatever it is that's the farthest away possible from that outcome. Now, that doesn't mean we can exactly say what it is, because it's easier to grip, in some sense, what it means to torture and break and hurt, and not to be able to conceptualize so clearly how you would have to act if you were acting in the exact opposite manner. But at least it implies that it exists, and I see that pattern being laid out in this dreamlike manner in the New Testament, and it has something to do with, well, it has something to do, and this is for sure, with the voluntary acceptance of mortality. Because of course that's the poisoned apple, right? The fact that everybody looks forward into the future to know that you're finite, and so is everything that you love. And it's very difficult for that not to poison your existence. And well, there's no getting out of it, as far as we can tell, but there might be something like switching your attitude to it, and you could say, well, that's the price you pay for being. And the heroic thing to do is to accept that, and not even to accept it grudgingly. To say, all right, I'm going to go along with that, I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to act nonetheless as if being is good, and then I'm going to see how things turn out. It's something like that. And God saw that it was good. And so it's an act of courage, right? There's an act of courage that's associated with that transformation of attitude. And even with regards to the notion that the world is good, it's a courageous attitude, especially given that there's so much evidence that makes that conclusion difficult to continually draw. But the alternative seems to me to be far worse.
If you like this video, please give this a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more content like it, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and have a beautiful day.